Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Needs Some Introduction. I'm your host, Victor, and on this podcast, we go week to week covering a popular television series and making recommendations as well, things that are currently available to watch or thematically linked to what we're watching. In this particular episode, we are discussing the third episode of the Apple TV series Pluribus, an episode called Grenade. On these episodes, as usual, I'm joined by Sona. Hi, Sona.
Hi.
Okay, a few things to discuss before we get into the episode breakdown. First of all, just some things you may want to catch up with. One Battle After Another, if anybody's been wanting to watch that, is now available to rent digitally. And there's a whole episode in our backlog where we discuss the film in detail, full of spoilers. So if you are watching that, do check out our full coverage of that film, a very excellent film, which will definitely be in the award contentions later this year. A film that will not be in award contention, but should be, and actually has some thematic overlap with One Battle After Another. Edington, the new Ari Aster film, is debuting on HBO Max today, and I will be rewatching it and possibly discussing it with Darren in our next conversation. Sona, any interest in either one of these films?
I don't know too much about either of them. I definitely have heard of One Battle After Another, but I can't, as I sit here, recall anything about it.
It's the Leonardo DiCaprio film. He's
right. Okay.
Yeah, like a leftist
I heard it was good.
terrorist. It's very good. Yeah. PTA directing and writing. And very surprising. A lot of fun. Very long, but I described this in my review. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes, and it feels like about an hour and a half. It just never stops the entire time.
Interesting.
So, thrilling watch for sure. And has a lot to say about the world at large at this moment, as does Edington, by the way. Edington is like a modern Western. It's set during COVID. A lot of people hated this movie because they're like, I don't want to think about COVID right now. But what I'll say is that it's not actually about COVID. It's more about the toxic culture that we all live in right now and who might actually be pulling those strings. It's a little bit of a conspiracy thriller, but you kind of have to squint to see it, and very funny and very dark, but definitely a conversation piece to say the least. Sona, a little bit of news that came out yesterday. Have you caught up with season 2 of Poker Face by chance?
I have not. Did I see that it didn't get renewed?
Yes, this is what I was about to ask you, because this is very, very strange. First of all, this is possibly Peacock's most popular series. And again, season 2, very popular. However, not quite as popular as season 1. So the reason Peacock did not renew this was because, given the cost of the show, which is a lot, but all these shows are ridiculously expensive nowadays. So they're getting rid of their signature show or one of their signature shows because they wanted a 2-year renewal so they could shoot 2 years rather than one. And they rejected this. So now the show is up for grabs and they are positioning it to other streamers. I'm sure somebody will be interested in picking this up given its popularity. But here's the bizarre part. Natasha Lyonne is still, and which of course is synonymous with this show, is still on as a producer and is crafting the story with Rian Johnson. But Charlie Cale, this lie detector person, will be played by Peter Dinklage. What do you think? Would you watch this with I don't know if they're going to literally be, this is the same person, or there's just another Charlie Cale who also has this ability. But either way, if it's somehow we're supposed to just pretend this is the same person, that would be extremely strange, I think. But even then, if it is just a coincidence, there's another guy out there who happens to have this name, and the name works, of course, for a man or a woman, who just had, you're going to try to sell your show with a 2-season minimum requirement with a completely different lead character. Like it's very strange. Would you be curious to see this version of the show?
It's reminding me, as you're describing it, of the Beckys and Roseanne, which is a show that I've been referencing lately more than I expected to.
Or how about the new Matlock, right? Which is just literally, she calls herself Matlock because of the show Matlock.
Is that right? But at least that's a whole other generation of the show, kind of, right? Whereas here, it's just mid-run. They just swap somebody out. Peter Dinklage is very watchable.
Sure. Absolutely.
Maybe.
He had a great cameo in The Lowdown, which just wrapped up recently, which is terrific, by the way. If anybody hasn't caught up with that, definitely do check it out. And he's just in one episode as Ethan Hawke's, the person who used to own the bookstore with Ethan Hawke's character. and shows up just for one episode and steals all the scenes he's in. Of course, he's excellent. But yeah, I love seeing Peter Dinklage in this type of role. He would probably be excellent at it. But
he was in Dexter recently,
of
right?
course, yeah,
So.
Dexter. And but yeah, this is very strange that how are they going to try to square that circle? Yeah, so very curious. I wanted to mention it here just for that, how strange this story is.
Yeah.
But and I would definitely sample it, no doubt about it. But I don't know. It seems like if I'm going to make a multiple $100 million investment on 2 seasons of a show, I don't know how they're going to position this and get a buyer, to be honest. And a few more things to bring up in the next episode of the podcast. Darren and I will be talking about Running Man, the Stephen King adaptation, and in conjunction with our ongoing coverage of the show Welcome to Derry, which is not that great, to be honest. But, since there's been a lot of other things that we talked about, Frankenstein last week, so just monsters in general. There is Stranger Things is coming back in a couple of weeks, which is basically a riff on the It story in the first place, or inspired by it anyway. So as long as there's some overlapping other content, we'll probably be discussing them in tandem. And then we will probably stop because this has not been an extremely satisfying show. However, the ratings have been very strong. So I guess HBO is happy with the results, although not much to talk about on the show, to be honest. But we will stick with it for at least a couple more weeks. Sona, some things you may want to watch. First of all, All Her Fault. Were you able to sample any of this?
I haven't, and it's interesting. I've been hearing a lot of mixed reviews on it.
Yeah. I watched the first 2.5 episodes. I dipped out of the show before things got really crazy. The tone of the show, I was curious if you'd seen the first episode, which I think you can stream for free on Peacock without a subscription, or maybe even the first 2 episodes. But the first episode of the show, you'll get a sense of the tone of the show right away. And right away, I'm like, all right, this show's announcing that it's a silly show, right? Like in the first scene, basically, and jumping headfirst into its premise. So maybe I think that's intentional, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But by the 3rd episode or so, I was like, okay, I don't know if I can stick with this show. I have other things I'd rather be watching. So I did then look up spoilers on the season. And I won't spoil anything here, obviously, but this show goes in some pretty crazy direction. So what I would say is sample the first episode, see if that tone in that very first scene works for you. It is very much table setting to set your expectations of the tone of the show. And what I will say, and this is not a spoiler because it's right in the commercial, that at the end of the first episode, the police investigator goes, "You never would have thought it, that all these people were going to end up killing each other." And they have 8 people on the board who are like main characters that we've already met in the show. Most of them, not all of them. Some are like new faces on that board, but I'd say 5 of the 8 are main characters that we have met in that first episode. And I'm like, well, he doesn't literally mean they all kill each other. And yes, people, that's not a metaphorical kill each other. They all end up dead by the end of the show. So that's literal.
Must be alive at the end, right?
A couple of people. Anyway, if you're in for a wild ride, and yes, literally when you see that trailer and you're thinking like, oh, they've edited that in some way. They don't really mean the whole cast is dead at the end. It's no, most of them are dead at the end. Yes. And if you watch episode 1, you'll be like, there's no way this turns into a slaughter. And it is headed that direction. So anyway, it didn't quite work for me. But if you like that kind of very plotty and very outlandish, often you may be on board for this. And you have to have Peacock, which of course, Peacock's like a black hole. I don't know anybody who has it, but I guess some people do.
Well, as we discussed by text, I bet they'll have a great deal for Black Friday. So
they will. And also, by the way, everybody here who's probably listening to this obviously has Apple TV. Apple TV now has a bundle with Peacock, which is only like $2 more. Right. So if you want to, and honestly, that's the crazy thing about it. I'm not even sure I would make the $2 a month surcharge on Peacock because there's really not that much on there. But maybe if something big comes on there, just put a pin in this one, because if something does pop up on Poker Face, by the way, was on. I had Peacock at that point in time, but then this was really infuriating, by the way. I literally bought Peacock Black Friday last year because it was 99 cents a month if you paid for the entire year. And I'm like, well, at some point, I didn't know when, but at some point, Poker Face is coming back this year. So I might as well pay for it because it's such a bargain. And no joke, like 3 months into this Black Friday deal, they sent an announcement going, regardless of what price you're on now, we're raising you to $8.99 a month. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're not even complying with the contract you had. So yeah, I immediately was turned off by that. So canceled
That's bananas.
them. Yeah. So canceled them as soon as I could.
Yeah, very upsetting.
Okay, another thing you may want to check out is The Beast in Me, Sona. So I did tease this last week, and we could still discuss this next week. So sample it and see what you think.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch this one.
I've seen 2.5 episodes, and I honestly really like the pilot. And by episode 3, like episode 2 changes the focus of the show. And I'm like, okay, I thought it was going to be about this cat and mouse between these two characters who are really like two sides of the same coin. And it is very intriguing that you have this Matthew Rhys playing this billionaire and this successful writer who has writer's block and has dealt with this tragedy in her family, who is always playing the victim, but really they turn out to have a lot of the same kind of self-motivation, and they find this commonality in each other. And I'm like, that's really intriguing. Two people that perceive themselves as diametrically opposed, really two sides of the same coin. Intriguing premise. And then episode 2 comes along and I'm like, okay, now we've introduced these other characters. There's this drunk FBI agent that shows up at her house. And I'm like, is she hallucinating this? What is happening with this guy in her house? Turns out he is a real person. But anyway, I was just like, why are we now? And we see his backstory. He's having an affair. And I'm like, okay, why have we changed the focus? And then with episode 3, Sona, they have now changed the focus to Matthew Rhys's father, who's like this former, he's got all this shady background as well. And maybe he's the one who's pulling these strings, but not the strings we've seen up until this point, a whole other conspiracy that's going on. And honestly, I kind of tapped out of the show in this episode because I'm like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be paying attention to. So maybe it does coalesce by the end, but sample it and I will plug along if you are committed to it. But I at this moment, I basically quit in the middle of episode 3. So yeah, take that as you will. I don't think the show has told me what it even is at this point, 3 episodes in. So not a lot of confidence there.
That sounds rough.
Yeah. And one more thing you may want to check out. Have you seen any of these incredibly popular Harlan Coben series at all? Have you seen any of these things?
I haven't seen any of those series, but I used to be a very big Harlan Coben fan of the novels. Like they are the perfect plane reading or beach reading. He has a way of constructing these novels that have these perfect cliffhanger endings to each chapter that make you just want to keep reading. James Patterson has a similar effect on me, where the chapters are relatively short, there are a lot of cliffhangers, and you just fly through the book. So I've been a big fan of his books. I'd be willing to watch a movie. I just haven't seen any.
So this is a series, actually. This is on Amazon Prime. I have not seen any of this, but I'm just letting you know that it's out there because it is kind of in this arena of these kind of trashy mysteries that I've just kind of outlined previously. This is, and I'm more interested in this one than in the others, although I've never seen any of this Harlan Coben adaptations either. But this one is called Malice, and this stars David Duchovny. So much X-Files talent on the shows that we're discussing in this moment here. But David Duchovny and his wife is played by Carice Van Houten from Game of Thrones. And they are these extremely rich European family, even though the company's an American, but I guess whatever, they explained it somehow. And they hire a male nanny who's played by Jack Whitehall, who is a comedian, very handsome though, for what you stereotypically assume a comedian to be, but he's playing a very villainous character in this. And even people who have been trashing the show say that he gives a really good performance. And the idea is, why is this? And by the way, Duchovny in the trailer is like, why do we have a male nanny? Like basically is disparaging this very character. But regardless, it turns out that he is sabotaging the family from within. And the story is there's this, everybody doesn't see what he's doing. Duchovny's overreacting to it, but for his own reasons. But it actually turns out he actually is nefarious in some ways. And then apparently there is some secret history that Duchovny doesn't know about. There's an agenda that this character has. And that's the outline of the show. I think it's relatively short. And I might actually sample this. Once again, I usually fall off on these thrillers. I've tried to sample a few this summer, but I will probably try to sample it. But it did sound intriguing. I thought that you might actually want to hear about it.
Yeah, I'm definitely a Harlan Coben fan, so I would be willing to check it out. I didn't realize that he has a lot of movies of his books, it sounds like.
Yeah, I don't, honestly, once again, not even a fan, so I don't even have the information in front of me, but there are a couple of adaptations on Netflix that are some of the most popular Netflix adaptations ever. And now Amazon Prime has some kind of deal with him, and they've had a couple of adaptations just this year, Malice being the most recent one, that have also been massively popular. So as of course, it's funny that reviews are always mediocre. The audience reactions always just like, it's okay. But the audience, maybe because of all those cliffhangers, like you mentioned, that are already right there for you in the chapters themselves, that it keeps the audiences hooked in.
I will say also, if this adds any interest for you, if I'm remembering correctly, a lot of the Harlan Coben novels are set in northern New Jersey and New York City metropolitan area. So there are often little shout outs to areas that we're familiar with.
Just in my minor research of this, I think most of his books have been adapted to take place in Europe, in England, and Europe in general. Yeah, believe it or not. Okay. Even though I think the writer is British, but I think you're correct that they mostly take place in the US. But most of these adaptations take place in Europe for whatever reason.
Okay, never mind.
But I forget, there is a Netflix, but I wanted to bring up exactly to your point. There is one of the Netflix series, again, I'm not an expert at this, but you folks can track it down if you want to, did take place in New Jersey and was shot either in New Jersey or Pennsylvania, somewhere around here. So I think that is actually in my perusing of the synopses of all of these TV series adaptations. It's the only one that is actually takes place like where it is written on the page. So
it's funny, when they went to make the movie, they said, who would want to see this set in suburban New Jersey? Do something more interesting with it.
Well, I think the biggest hit they've ever had, I think on Netflix was, what was it called? Safe? Maybe it was called Safe. And takes place in Britain, even though the book is taking place in the United States. And it stars Michael C. Hall, the star of Dexter, doing a British accent, which everybody complimented, like, wow, what a great British accent. But I'm like, you get an American to play a British character from a book that takes place in America? It's very strange. But anyway, all these Coben Harlan adaptations seem bizarre to me, but I guess there's definitely an audience for it. So
it sounds like a good thing to have on a Sunday when you're wrapping gifts, maybe thinking of the holiday season, right? Kind of a background movie.
Well, that's ironically one of the reviews I saw today when I was looking for reviews of Malice to see if it was any good, because it's just been released today. So there's not really kind of a critical consensus yet on those web pages. And it said, the show you'll be binging until Christmas. So to your point, maybe the show to put on the background after Thanksgiving preparation while you're preparing the turkey, and maybe later when you're wrapping gifts, you can just have it playing in the background.
But sometimes those movies with so many twists and turns, you check out for a couple minutes, and when you come back, you think, what on earth has happened since I went to the bathroom?
Oh, but they always do as they bring up the clue, they play quickly like a flashback to the events from before. They know how much engagement you're making of the material. They've calculated that into the assembly of the episodes.
Soap operas do that too, right?
Or reality shows, right? I don't watch a lot of reality TV. Obviously you do. But I've noticed that from being an outsider when it's on, that if someone says, I can't believe you said that to her, they will now flash back to the conversation. So you didn't have to see it the first time. They're going to catch you up wherever you are in the story. All right. And one thing that I do want to recommend that I have been watching is Down Cemetery Road, which, by the way, in this very episode, after Sona and I wrap up our conversation about Pluribus, I have included a conversation with a new listener, Lucy, from the UK. And we discuss this new series, which is also on Apple TV. This is from the author of the Slow Horses novels. This is actually his very first book. And it is about this, I assume the Emma Thompson character in this show will continue if this show is a success. This is Sona. I know you're a fan of this actress. This is Ruth Wilson and Emma Thompson here. These mismatched investigators. Ruth Wilson plays a museum, like a art restorer. So someone who, in the very first scene, we see that she has a very specific eye for detail, and she accidentally uncovers a conspiracy and then draws in Emma Thompson, who is this hardened former police investigator, into this case. And these two women, who are very prickly in very different ways, make this very odd team. And there's a lot of comedy, but there's a lot of suspense in this as well. And the reviews have been pretty mediocre for this, but I would say I've really enjoyed this so far. Highly recommend it.
And it's a series.
It's a TV series, right? And it's on Apple TV, so everybody can watch this. And I do recommend it. And if this is a success, I'm sure they'll make more of these since they have this relationship with the author. And of course, they would love to have another Slow Horses on top of the success they've had with that show. And of course, if anybody would like to, and one more thing to mention before I change topics yet again, is that in our conversation, we will be discussing spoilers. We'll assume that you have seen those first 4 episodes. So if you haven't, then do watch those before you listen to our conversation. I'll be adding it to the end of this episode. So hang around for that, or look at the show notes to see where that discussion begins. And of course, if there's anything that you'd like to have me review or discuss on the podcast in the future, I haven't made this shout out in quite some time, but email us, needsomeintroduction@gmail.com. And I haven't had any new emails. We've been having many, many emails recently, many email conversations I've been having, but with people who've reached out previously. So if you have anything you'd like to have us cover on the show, or you'd like to have us review something that does tangentially tie into some of the conversations we're having, just reach out to us. needsomeintroduction@gmail.com. Or if you're listening to us on Spotify, post a comment on any one of the episodes and I'll get back to you. And of course, on YouTube, leave comments there as well if you're listening to us on YouTube. And believe it or not, even though Lucy and I just recorded that conversation just yesterday, Sona, I didn't know this until we were emailing after the fact, but she used to live in Albuquerque. So I asked her, what do you think of watching Pluribus? Any kind of observations you make about Albuquerque? First of all, she has a fascinating biography. I'm like, how did you end up in Albuquerque? I will not share her biography here since I haven't asked for her permission, but a really interesting biography she had, and lived in Albuquerque for years. And of course, we didn't get this on microphone because we were only discussing it after the fact. But she brought up some really interesting points. First of all, she talks about how she knows that Barnes and Nobles from the show, and also seeing the city on fire, still feeling the nostalgia of being on that mountain peak and seeing the city from a distance. But she brought up a really interesting point, which I was not aware of, which is that in New Mexico, there are many millionaires. I think per capita, one of the largest percentages of millionaires, but also a lot of poverty, one of the most impoverished states in the country as well. So maybe, and I didn't think about this until having that email back and forth with her, that maybe that is part of what's being explored in this show, because I think it's a theme we see in this very episode. But the idea that you have a very privileged class, and maybe that's something that we say about the economy right now. And then, of course, there is this underclass that is like serving them, right? Is like providing them the Ubers or drivers and the Instacart shoppers for these wealthy folks, and this real cultural divide between the very rich and the very poor, which is happening everywhere in the country and everywhere in the world, honestly, but maybe illustrated when she brought up those statistics that here's a state that has per capita the most millionaires, but is also one of the 5 poorest states in the country. So very interesting. And maybe that's context that Gilligan is actually trying to explore, because it made me think about Breaking Bad in that same context, that you have this elite guy who is really good. People used to argue all the time, just let him cook, like literally, just let him cook meth. But the idea that it's just, he just wants to be good at this thing. But what is he making? He's making something that's addictive to the public at large so that he can get a little wealthier, so that he can have some more security, so he can feel accomplished. And maybe that's the world we live in, right? We have billionaires that are selling us addictive products, whether it's social media, TikTok, even people addicted to their chatbots right now. So these people are all getting rich by getting us addicted to their products. And maybe that's something that's being explored here, not necessarily addiction, but in this particular Pluribus as well, that maybe the idea of this discrepancy between the rich and the poor is being explored as well.
Interesting idea.
All right, Sona, before we get into the plot breakdown, Pluribus, the episode's called Grenade, episode 3. What did you think of this episode of the show?
I enjoyed it, but it did occur to me that if you are not I want to pronounce her name correctly, Ree Seahorn, is that right?
Ray, I think it's Ray.
Ray Seahorn. If you are not a Ray Seahorn, well, I think in order to enjoy this show, you either have to be a big Ray Seahorn fan or at least not opposed to her, because boy, she is doing a lot of heavy lifting. There is so much time that we are just watching her alone, or I think every scene has her in it, right?
Yeah, the whole the whole series is from her point of view, especially in this episode, by the way, right? We actually had cutaways to the world at large before the outbreak, but you're absolutely correct. At this moment, even the flashback that we have, of course, is all from her perspective.
Right. So I do enjoy her. So it's not a problem for me. And I liked this episode. I thought it had a little bit of a slower pace. I'm thinking as I'm talking about it, because I know I complained about that plane scene going on too long in the second episode. But just generally, I felt like now we know the lay of the land and the situation she's in. And I think we have a better grasp on it than we had as we were working out the details of it in the first 2 episodes. So it felt like a calmer, quieter episode, but one that I think she carried well. What did you think?
Yeah, I liked this episode in the moment. It's funny, I rewatched it for taking notes. I liked it a lot better in the rewatch.
Oh, okay.
Only because I think that on my initial watch, I'm waiting to see what happens now. And as a matter of fact, I had anticipated something that doesn't happen, which when she stops the plane in the final moments of last week, I actually thought, oh, she's going to jump on that plane. And then we're going to see more of her philosophical discussions with this other character who has a very different point of view. But of course, that's not what happened. She wants to take Zosha with her. That's all she wanted to do, take her off of that plane.
That was my assumption, actually.
Yeah. Oh, that was the, okay. So we had different anticipations.
Yeah, that is what I anticipated happening. But I was surprised we didn't see the scene where it happened.
Right. So yeah, we just.
And I would have liked to have seen the scene where it happened.
Yeah, same. Maybe especially if she got into an argument with him or he got upset about her taking her away.
Right, because we know Zosha was struggling with how to respond to 2 contradictory requests when she doesn't want to hurt anybody. So I would have liked to have seen the resolution of that.
That's a good point as well. So yeah, so it was a little bit different than I expected. It's a lot of middle of the show here. I always talk about, and by the way, Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul definitely had these type of table setting episodes as well. So it's a lot of character development. There's a lot of exploring the ideas of the limitations and the satire of this world without a lot of plot, basically. And I think that is kind of where the shortfall is. But we need those episodes to set things up. So it was positive on it, but I could have done with a little more plot, basically. But I know Gilligan does his shows at his own pace. So
I get where you're coming from, and I don't disagree. But at the same time, the episode felt relatively short to me.
That's a good point too. I think the first episode, and it is relatively short. I think it was 40. Okay. I think it was 45, 40. It was in the 40s, maybe under 50 minutes. And I do think at least one of the episodes last week, maybe both of them, were over an hour. So definitely a shorter episode there as well. All right, a couple of things I forgot to bring up next week and last week, I should say. and something that I wasn't aware of. First of all, that I forgot to mention in all of our talking, that even, of course, that Carol does drink a lot in that episode of the show, but it is brought up early on and explicitly that she has a drinking problem, right? She literally has an alcoholic monitor in her car. So she's
you don't
had
get
multiple
a breathalyzer on your car without doing something.
Exactly. And the fact that the show isn't just saying, oh, she's drinking a lot because of this, but that she's had a drinking problem, obviously. The show wants us to know that. So I do think that's important. I don't know if that's her superpower because lots of people drink too much. And I don't think most of them did turn into pod people. The second thing is I was like, what is this weird genre of romance that she writes? It sounds like there's science fiction in there as well. Like I just was, what a weird mix. I thought was it weird.
Yeah, that was why I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off, but I just remember last week I had mentioned the genre was like speculative historical fiction or something like that, something funny. And there's also a comment where she's talking with Helen about what is this? It's a boat that sails on a sea made of sand, and it's green, or maybe it should be purple or something like that. So we did get tipped off that it is a very strange, specific genre that she's writing.
Right. But so to that point, in listening to other people talking exactly about Pluribus on other podcasts and TV shows, they had this term called romantasy, which I had not heard before, but apparently this is a known genre, the romance.
Yes, I've heard of it.
Novel. So yeah, so that is what she writes. She writes romantasy novels. Something I learned here. Oh, and one last thing to bring up, of course, is when she meets with all those people, an observation I made only in thinking about this after the fact, that something I should have noticed in the moment, but of course is part of that revelation she's having. I think at some core level, she thinks that she's immune to being brainwashed because of her temperament. So she's going into meeting with all those folks thinking that, of course, they have the same temperament she has, to only discover that, no, it's completely arbitrary. People who are immune to this and not, and they don't see things the same way as her at all, except for maybe one person. There might be one other person out there who does see the world just as cynically, or maybe even more cynically than she does. And I have a feeling they're going to run into each other.
I agree with that. I see what you're saying. I guess having met so many, what's the right word? Irascible, grumpy people in my life, I think it would be silly to think that her temperament is the reason she was saved, because there are many people that are, bottom line, unbearable to be around. but maybe. Hello?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just reading an email, but and also check. Okay. I was reading an email and checking my notes at the same time.
No, sometimes we get cut off. So, did it happen?
Did it happen again?
Yes.
Okay, so the episode begins. We have flashback 7 years here to one of these ice hotels. Where is this ice hotel? It's a very famous ice hotel. Is it?
I think they said it was in Denmark or
Norway.
Norway.
Yeah, Norway. Right, right. And I've seen photographs of this. It's beautiful there. I was not aware, for some reason, when I would see those beautiful pictures of the Northern Lights and this hotel, I would fantasize about going there. And I'm like, well, it's got to be warm inside, like an igloo, right? It insulates from the cold. But no, according to what we see here, it's only a couple of degrees above freezing. So, Sona, first question, would you ever go to this hotel?
I'm with Carol on this. I appreciate it as a marvel of engineering, and it certainly looks beautiful. This is a place I would like to have a drink and then go home to my warm hotel room.
Hopefully they have an igloo nearby that you can like exit from the lobby of the hotel and immediately go into a nice warmer surroundings with a fire burning in the middle of it, hopefully.
It just... Listen, it's well established that I hate the cold, so I am coming with that bias. But everything they showed was just miserable to me. Again, I appreciate it as a brilliant thing to do. But seriously, can you imagine going to the bathroom in that environment?
That better not be a nice toilet.
Yikes.
Carol finds out for the first time that she's a best-selling author. And she's just being on the bestseller list is not enough. How high am I? Am I in the top 20? Am I in the top 10? So I think this goes back to that idea of Gilligan talking about how this partially inspired by his own inability to appreciate the success he's having. And even though she complains, and we know that she likes to complain, that's not something people like to do normally, according to the show. But we do know eventually that this really was one of her fondest moments, right? Because it literally gets brought up later on as potentially her nirvana. I guess the snuggling up together under a big bunch of blankets would be the upside of all that.
Watching the Northern Lights, which looks like a screensaver to Carol, but still.
That's right. And probably is a screensaver because this was not shot there, by the way.
The whole charm of the Northern Lights is eroding now that we're able to see it here too. Have you heard?
Oh, I know. Were you? I had that was actually a question I was going to have. Did you have a chance? Were you able to see it at all?
I have not seen them here. Was it last year or earlier this year? I'm not sure. There was another environmental phenomenon, weather phenomenon that made them visible here. And my friend who lives across the street actually posted a photo on social media of her seeing the Northern Lights, which to me was so shocking because we have so much ambient light here in the city that it's almost impossible to see anything. And I feel like in real time, I happened to check social media just as she posted it. I threw on my shoes, I ran out the door, but I still missed it.
We saw it here, not this time. We saw it the last time. Here it was too cloudy. I think we couldn't see it this most recent time, even though it was supposed to be even brighter. I think the conditions were just better last time, but I couldn't actually see them. I could see that the sky was like purple in that region. But we had friends who live up in New Hampshire and basically up in New England that posted incredible photographs because they had much, I guess.
Speaking of photographs, did you try taking a picture? Because they say that you can see it in the photo much better than you can with the naked eye.
Oh, we did not. We should have tried that. Yeah, maybe we should have.
Worth a try.
Definitely. With a professional camera, you definitely can do some lens filtering. I'm sure you could do it with digital as well. As I mentioned at the beginning, you were onto it, but I actually expected her to be on a plane to Vegas this time around, but that's not what actually happens. She just wants Zosha with her. I did like the fact that it had actual pilots, the actual bodies of the pilots flying the plane, because they know it's going to make Carol feel more comfortable if they look like pilots in their pilot uniforms. So it's not just
instead of a TGI Fridays waitress.
Exactly. So this is, what she prefers. So that's what they give her. She starts asking questions to Zosha. Are there any other non-English speaking people? And for many reasons, whether it's the language barrier, whether it's the 8-year-old that doesn't really work for her either.
Right.
There's one candidate. This guy was able to evade being found for quite some time. And still, they've rarely communicated with him at all. This person called Manusos, who's actually in the credit list. So I have a feeling this guy's going to come back. And of course, he has the same resources she has. So if he decides, who's that woman who called me up and told me to go F my mother, and in Spanish, the only Spanish she knows, that obviously she is not one of these pod people. So maybe he's like, aha, I have found another misanthrope.
Right.
I have to go meet with her. Even if we don't speak the same language, we'll figure out where to communicate. And I do wonder what that's going to be like when she's confronted with maybe someone even more conspiratorial, more mean-spirited than her. Is it going to make her reevaluate her own perceptions? I'm curious. When she really realizes that she's really alone, I did like that moment where she's basically having a panic attack in the bathroom as well.
Yeah.
After flying off the handle yet again. At least not at one of these people, thank God. The plane would have crashed. Then she gets driven home. They have now aggregated all of her mail everywhere it was all over the world because she's the last person, or one of the last people, who needs to receive mail at this point. So they have everybody else write any letter someone's written to you. You automatically know what the contents of it was. And this is the beginning, kind of setting this, pulling out a thread here, that she gets some mail. She gets some junk mail. It's strange that they deliver the junk mail as well. Like, it matters at this point, with her wife's name on it. And of course, also receives this gift that her wife had bought her at the airport, which was a massage gun. And this, for the first time in this episode, makes her fly off the handle And she's basically saying that you are never allowed to use her memories again. You must forget her. I don't think you can just tell someone to forget somebody.
I doubt it.
And that I am the only person who's allowed to remember her. And of all the metaphors, and there are, I think, multiple metaphors now on this show, I did think of this one, which I hadn't thought about before. There is this certain selfishness to her loss, right? That in a way, sometimes people feel that way, right? Like when you lose something, you feel like I'm the only one who's experiencing this. And there's a certain kind of depression that it's formed. And she obviously has depression or anxiety or some combination of both. But I did make me wonder about that, if you see that there as well, that she is basically saying this pain that I'm feeling is only mine. You're not allowed to have loss. Only I can.
Well, I think because for them, it's not a loss, right?
For sure. Exactly. And that's part of why she's so angry, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that is frustrating because usually if you are grieving someone, you can talk about them and your experiences with them with other people who would also be grieving them. Maybe not in the exact same way as you, but understand at least the concept of what you're going through. And there's some comfort in sharing that experience and sharing those memories. Whereas here, it's probably the opposite, right? They're acting like everything is just fine.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And isn't it helpful for us to talk about these things that it probably feels very invasive, right? That all of these treasured memories are being shared with the entire population, essentially.
Yeah. And she's the only one who's on the outside looking in. And yeah, this is like her worst nightmare in so many ways.
Yeah, especially for the type of person she is. Yeah.
Next question I have for you, Sona. She spends her time watching Golden Girls reruns.
Oh boy.
Turns out. What would be your comfort show?
Wow, what a good question. In this particular situation, or just generally, what is my comfort show?
Let's use it in this situation. Yeah.
I feel like in this situation, it would be Seinfeld.
You know what? I was going to say Seinfeld too. And
no way.
And I just thought of it in this moment that a show that I have barely watched. I've maybe seen 5 episodes of the show ever, but I think that would be a comfort as well, even to me, as not a fan of the show possibly, is Sex and the City. Because in my mind, I was just suddenly thinking about having a lot of people around and the camaraderie of friends. And Friends, by the way, I think it was something I did think about.
Yes, right after I said Seinfeld, I thought about Friends as well.
Yeah, when I thought about this earlier today, I thought about Friends and I thought about Seinfeld both. But yeah, Sex and the City would be another good example of like when you're seeing none of the messiness of a congested city. There's like nothing but the messiness of a congested city in that show.
Yeah. And so much of it is about the annoyances of everyday life and things that now are being smoothed over in this new world.
I've just saw an early screening of a movie called Eternity that's coming out at Thanksgiving, and I'll probably put a review in it here. I didn't love the movie, by the way, but it's like a rom-com, and the premise of it is someone dies and then goes to heaven, and they get to choose who they go to heaven, spend their eternity with, and what type of eternity they get to experience. And this is right in the trailer, not a spoiler. Turns out that her husband had died at an early age at war, and then she had remarried. So when she goes to heaven, it turns out she can pick either husband. And that, of course, becomes tricky. But there's a gag in there that people have to pick the world they want to live in, like this kind of perfect heaven for them. And they can't change their minds. Like you can only, and there's this very funny scene where someone just randomly in the background has escaped from their personal heaven. And they're like, I can't do Museum World anymore. I can't look at another picture. So it's made me think about that. Here she is watching Golden Girls forever, because that's the problem with even picking Seinfeld when I was asking myself this question earlier today, which is, as much as I love Seinfeld, if I just watch it every day for the rest of my life, I don't know if I'd love it anymore. So it is.
Well, then I also wondered about this new world. Who is running this television station? And is it purely for Carol's benefit?
Just for her, exactly.
Really needs the television, do they?
Well, I think that's actually a question I think that's raised in this show thematically later. And we'll get to it very soon, actually. But I did think about the same thing. First of all, I'm like, is she just watching this on DVDs? She could just go to the library and get all the DVDs. Possibly that's what's happening. She's just watching DVDs. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if she picked up the phone and says, just put the Golden Girls on, because we've all watched shows in syndication. In the old days, that Channel 9 or Channel 11 reruns, we got those via antenna. So all those broadcasts still exist today. So you can imagine her local broadcaster just running the show just for her.
Just to make her happy.
Who else is there? And by the way, I'm sure they have.
Keep her calm.
Right. And by the way, I'm sure that Golden Girls was already in rotation on one of those shows. Right. And they literally just have to flip the switch and go, hey, turn on your TV. It'll be running for the rest of eternity.
All Golden Girls, all the time.
All the time. Forever. No commercials, nothing to advertise. So another critique I think it's being made here is this along the lines, actually, maybe of her having a broadcast just for herself and how wasteful that is. She refuses to eat this food that they're like, hey, this is a meal you loved. And think about that, being able to have these experiences you only had once in your life, to suddenly have them catered to you again. Sounds, again, going back to that movie concept, sounds like a fantasy come true. But then, of course, there is the downside of it that, well, what if it's not earned? Does that experience still have its value? But then there is the double-edged sword of this, right? So you have the idea that I will not eat this food you made for me. I'm going to go down to my grocery store and buy my groceries like I normally do. And when she gets down there, this is really fascinating to me. This is maybe the most fascinating moment in the show, that she gets down there. And of course, her Whole Foods, or Sprouts as it's called here, is empty. So then she says, I want it to be full so I can go do my grocery shopping. So now they refill the grocery store. And I have some issues in how this is executed, by the way, but I'm more interested in the metaphor here, that on the one hand, it is like the nightmare of supposedly having a perfect socialist society where they're like, of course, we don't need to put the food here on display. We have it all in a warehouse some way everybody gets the same allocation of food. And then you make it think to yourself, like, what if I don't want to eat that today? Or do we all have to agree on what we're eating that day so that we all eat the same mediocre food all the time, because everything has to be like kind of consensus? So that's kind of like the nightmare of having a truly socialist totalitarian system. But then on the other hand, you look at this and I think, what an incredible waste. Like, all this food is going to be, half of it's going to be thrown away. And by the way, that's true, right? Half the food that's in grocery stores goes into the garbage. And the reason that it's primarily goes in the garbage is because you have your pears sitting out for a week so that you look like you have a lot of abundance on the shelves. And then half of them are going to get thrown in the garbage. Meanwhile, people, like, this is a kind of a cliche to say, but people literally are starving, or at least have little access to fresh produce. While in this particular scenario, it's just her who's getting all of this variety. But you could say that, like, culturally, there are only certain elite segments of the population that have this experience. And then so that they can have this experience, there's a lot less for everybody else. So it's like, it kind of crystallized that in this very simple, just by exaggerating it to the point where all of this is put on display just for one human being.
Yes.
The thing I didn't really love about it is the fact that she's like off the phone, and within minutes they start to roll up. If one truck had shown up and then they started to pull the strawberries out and then another truck shows up, that was like the fact that they all arrive like in synchronization, which I know Gilligan loves this type of thing, like in Breaking Bad, and he loves this symmetry of image and stuff like that. So I know it's a thing for him. But it does seem like, how were these trucks were they all headed there in the first place? I thought everything was warehouse. Like, didn't, it just was, I think he did it for effect, obviously, but it seemed a little silly. I like I said, the more realistic version of it is whatever, some strawberries were in transit and they show up. And as they're unloading them, all of a sudden another truck shows up, and then another one, and then another one. And then she realizes, oh my God, like 100 trucks are going to show up. And then, of course, speaking to that, like, efficiency versus the luxuries for a small segment of the population, literally one person in this case, we have that moment where she's made herself dinner, some pasta, I think it looks like, and she's watching the Golden Girls. Again, of course, it's what she's the only thing she watches. But the power goes out momentarily. And once again, she doesn't like this because it has broken her illusion that things could just for a moment feel like they did before. Because now all of a sudden she's angry. She looks outside and she realizes, even as her power comes back on, that she's like the only place where they have electricity. And again, it comes back to that idea that they're like, well, we don't need electricity at night because there's no crime. And the vast majority of us are not working at night. So we really don't need that much electricity. Again, this fantasy of, well, look at all this efficiency. Isn't that great? But also the depersonalization of that. And the fact that she's the only one who could appreciate this is literally driving her crazy. How would you feel at this moment with all the power in this, that obviously they can produce way more than power than they need, is all just so that she can watch Golden Girls and make herself a bowl of pasta?
Well, I think it would just reinforce the loneliness of the experience that
For
she's
sure. Yeah.
having to absorb that all of this is only for your needs and you're driving all of these decisions. It's a little bit terrifying and definitely isolating, I think. So I do feel for her in that she's trying to, not that much time has elapsed. I think we're at 4 days, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
she's trying to figure this out as she goes, probably even though it's only been 4 days, every day feels like an eternity, I'm guessing. So
Not if you're drunk all the time.
maybe, yeah. I do think that this is a rough situation for any human being to be in.
Yeah. Although some people are enjoying it. So
True. I feel like there's
a
a level of denial there, though, for those that are
for sure.
just focusing on that. And even when you go back to what you started with, that breakfast that arrives at her door, so beautifully plated, and remember how much you love this breakfast when you had it in Provincetown or whatever it was. It's that disconnect, right? The part of what made that breakfast so delicious was the circumstances that you ate it in. And yeah, I'm sure there are things I've eaten in my life that if you could have them show up at my door, I would be thrilled to have them again. But it doesn't replicate the enjoyment that you had in that moment because you're not with those people. You're not in that place. The weather isn't the same, right? Like it's not that simple.
Yeah, I also think you're touching on something there, which is there's also the fact, again, it's rubbing salt in a wound again, because A, of course, you have this memory. B, that now knowing that other people have that memory. And how did they get that memory, right? Because I don't even know if she was with her wife at that point, but it's probably somebody else who knew her at that point that knows about her love of that meal. So however they found that out, it feels like she literally accuses them of stealing this out of other people's minds later. So it's like the memory being stolen that she's being reminded of. And of course, like you mentioned, it's that in our world, if someone came to you and says, I'm going to try to replicate that meal you loved, and they just get 80% of the way there, you appreciate the effort they made.
Yes.
And simultaneously, it reminds you of that experience. Now it's like it only reminds her of an experience she will never have again. She can tell them to like, hey, reenact it exactly as before. It's artificial because you're requesting it on demand. And of course, they can make it perfectly because the person who made it can tell them exactly how to make the meal exactly the same way as before. But then to her mind, she feels, well, they haven't earned that. They're just borrowing it from someone else, right? So it doesn't feel like it cheapens the original experience again. And that's how she perceives it for sure. She asks for a grenade, sarcastically, and then she takes a Xanax, and then which she had as a prescription already. So obviously not ideal for this woman to need, or I should say, to be the person in this particular situation. And then Zosha arrives with a grenade. The grenade, here's the Chekhov's grenade from the title showing up finally. You knew there was going to be a grenade in this episode. Especially, that's the other thing that's kind of funny. As soon as I saw the title for this episode, I'm like, this is not going to be a metaphorical grenade. I have seen enough Vince Gilligan shows that there's going to be a grenade in this episode. I love Zosha at the door being like, we thought you were sarcastic, but just in case, we brought it. We find out Zosha can drink. And not everybody gets drunk at the same time. So maybe she'll use this. She can
Mhm.
get people near her drunk by saying, here, have another drink, have another drink. And those people physically will be drunk. So I do think that we are seeing some clues here of some plot. And she definitely has a plot that she's hatching here. So I'm curious to get your idea of what that might be later. But this is another piece of information here that these individuals are having individual experiences, even if like it's all being uploaded to the hive mind afterwards. Carol's unimpressed with the small talk. I do like how Zosha gets very animated, like telling this. And it made me think again, I'm always wondering, could you imagine in this hive mind, if you are speaking the words of that person and you're not just speaking it robotically, you're like into selling, the aquavita and the history of this particular fermenter. And she seems really engaged until Carol deflates all of it by going, you just stole that from somebody else. But is she like in the moment? Maybe she really is feeling that, right? I guess we still don't really know what the interiority of these clones are, or these pod people, or someone else gave them another name. I can't remember what it was though. But
The hive mind.
the hive mind. Maybe that's not what they've been calling it. Someone had
Okay,
another.
I've seen that one online.
Someone had another terminology that I liked, but I can't remember it right now. But what do you think about this interaction here before the grenade goes off?
I liked it. I like Zosha.
I do too. But that's my point. My point is she obviously is starting to have a personal relationship with Zosha. And maybe she has already started to personalize her experience with Zosha, even if that's not the experience she's having. So I think that's very interesting, right? This goes back to this AI metaphor that I have imposed on the show, whether intentional or not, whether it's the intention of the show or not, that it's the same thing. Like how many people we know this for fact, people are having relationships with their AI chatbots. And of course, that AI chatbot isn't even differentiated. It's not only, that's something that I don't think people think about. It's not only that you are not talking to, that the AI itself, I don't believe actually has a personality or any interiority. That's my personal belief. But even if that is the case, your chatbot is not personalized at all. You literally are talking to this giant chatbot, and it's similar to this. Like maybe she is looking at Zosha as like the chatbot in front of her and is having a relationship with her, but her, even if she's interacting with a true entity, it is not her. It's like some group think, right? And that is something that, but we as people can't help. If I'm talking to my chatbot, as we've seen in recent history, that you start personalizing it. Like it's my friend. Is that your friend? It doesn't know who you are.
Right.
Oh, of course. And one more thing she brings up here, importantly, once again, before the grenade goes off, is she says, how long before I become one of your worker bees? And they're like, we really don't know. They haven't had any kind of breakthrough. So that's what you can kind of imply there. We might be close. We might not be close. We honestly don't know how close we are. And then Carol says, you said I had a choice. You people make no sense because you said I had a choice, but now you're not giving me a choice. You basically want to merge me with this group mind. And their rationalization was, if you saw someone drowning, you wouldn't ask them if you want to be saved. You would just try to save them. And she goes, oh, so now I'm drowning. Mm-hmm. So what did you think about this interaction? Because it is a very valid point, right? Carol is not well. Like that's a very important point, is like, I sympathize with Carol and I do not want to see her become merged with the hive mind, but Carol is not well. And they see this as well. So it's not, and this is an interesting point I was thinking about as I was watching the show. Is it possible if she was actually happy, if this is so great that I am like the last person on earth and everybody's catering to me, if she was happy in her circumstance, would they want to merge her? Would they be like, well, obviously she's happy. But is it the fact that she's obviously miserable that they think the way to rescue her is to merge her with the rest of the hive mind?
No, I don't think that's it. I think they have that same feeling about everybody the 12 people or whoever.
Right. I agree with that. It was just something that that thought was interesting to me. But I do agree with your general. But finish what you were saying.
Yeah, I think the plan is to have a perfect hive mind that does not exclude anybody. For what reason? That's a different issue.
Right. And of course, this culminates with her saying, here, let me pretend to pull the pin on this fake grenade. And it's a real grenade. And then she starts to realize like the limitations. And this is, again, I can't help but do the AI imposition on this, that we have people who the AI is always saying, yeah, that's a great idea. Even if you're like saying, I think I'm actually the ruler of this world, and and they're like, yeah, I think I think you're onto it. Congratulations. So she's kind of having that experience here where she's saying, oh, so you're not just humoring me, you're actually explicitly doing whatever I tell you to do, no matter what. And the answer is, yeah, here's a live grenade. And she blows up the side of her house. I do wonder, do you think that she's going to move back into the house? Because she does want to live back in that house. So will she be in the damaged house? Or do you think that by the time she shows up the next morning, like 200 people have shown up and have fully repaired her home?
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be repaired.
Yeah, all the expertise you need and unlimited amount of hands. So yeah, I think you'll probably fix it. It'll be all like the lawn will be re-excavated. They'll replace her car with an exactly identical car from the same year and everything. They've moved all the things from the coins from one car to the other. Oh, and of course, what triggers partially what is triggering this is, and I should have touched on this as well, was when she goes down this rabbit hole of saying that I know what you're going to tell me, that if I join this hive mind, that it's like walking on the beach. It's like all these incredibly pleasurable experiences. And that's when Zosha interjects it's like being under a bunch of blankets in that ice hotel, which of course is the moment we saw at the beginning, which now we discover, despite all the complaining, this is her heaven moment. And she says, I told you to keep your mitts off of Helen's memories. So that is, again, a reminder, a little salt in the wound. And she almost kills them. And she almost kills Zosha, by the way. She gets some kind of shrapnel in her side.
Yeah.
But they save her. The DHL guy, why is he still dressed as a DHL delivery guy, even though he works at the hospital now? Have they not changed their clothes in 4 days? Or did he put on the same clothes? That's a very strange detail.
It's interesting. I don't think I processed him as like a full-time hospital worker. I thought he was just the guy who happened to be nearby that they appointed to have this conversation with Carol.
That's a good point. It might have very well been like she said, help. I didn't even think about that when she says, I'll call for help. And Zosha says, help is on the way. It may very well have been like the DHL guy who was just out for delivery and he swings by, picks her up and delivers her to. And then, of course, because he's physically there and was the person who drove her there, she just goes back out and explains things to her. But I didn't think about that. In the moment, I'm like, is he like doing surgery in his DHL costume? What is happening?
Him a white coat, at least.
Yeah, right. At least. Isn't it more antiseptic that way? But yeah, it's probably, you're right. It probably was just the guy who was riding by at the moment and he picked her up. And then, of course, he was just the most efficient option. And then continued the conversation with her because he began the conversation with her. So that's it.
Great acting by this guy, by the way. Very humorous.
Oh my God. When she's like saying, hey, can I have a bazooka? Can I have a tank? How about a nuclear weapon? And he's like, nuclear weapon. Which again, there's just a little bit of personality to these folks. Although I do like that he's like uncomfortable with she's like, come on, push come to shove, yes or no. And he's like, yes, it's a yes. You don't want a nuclear weapon, do you? So they do at least care about self-preservation there. So although they would still comply. So I do wonder what the logic in this programming is, that they have to do whatever makes her happy, even if it kills other people. This seems like it is probably, I guess it couldn't do it if it killed other people because it can't kill animals, for example. True. But I guess if they hand it to her and then hope she doesn't kill all of them, I guess that's the trade-off. But that is
yeah, because last week at the lunch, the one guy says, well, if I killed the animal, would you prepare it for me?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So they understand that the other people can do those things.
Yeah, exactly. And then that is, but that's the limitation, right? If they're not doing the direct harm, then they have to facilitate these people who could be doing severe harm. So
to them.
Exactly. Turn the rocket launcher right on them and kill them.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he walks away, and there's that final moment. The camera holds on Ray Seahorn's face, and you see her expression change. Something is happening behind her eyes. She has an idea about how to use this flaw in the programming against these people. So, a couple of questions I have for you. Do you have any speculation, or at that moment when you saw her expression change, what do you think she's thinking in that moment? Do you
Well, I
suspect
don't
a
like to
plot?
speculate as,
Mm-hmm.
but it does seem this is kind of a cop out for me to give this answer that she's understanding the power that she has and trying to figure out how she can use that to her advantage, which is a real non-answer, but that's all I've got for you.
Yeah, I
What
don't
do you
have it. I don't. I just was curious to see if you had any ideas. I don't actually have any kind of concrete thoughts either. I like the fact that Gilligan's not giving us too many clues, like trying to puzzle box this show out. I think he just wants us to be on the hook for what could possibly be next and just setting it up.
Yeah, I think Carol is grasping the rules of the game
Yes.
now.
Mm-hmm. And then
in a way that before she was hearing them, but I
Right.
don't think she was fully processing them because she had other things she was trying to sort out. But I think now she's realizing how this all really works and what her role in it could be.
If I have any theory, which I just thought about it when I was rewatching, one of them was, is it possible that she could, for example, tell them to manufacture a cure? So if they can cure, I should say, fix her by unifying her, could she get them to use the same resources to reverse the unification?
Interesting.
And then if that would be something that she could request of them, and they would have to comply. So maybe that's a possibility. And then that would be very intriguing, by the way, because then she would actually have to go to these people and say, take the cure. I don't think she would. I think her, just being the person she is not going to force people to take the cure. She would actually give them the option. But many of these people, if not most of them, would probably say no, they want to stay unified. So, of course, you'd have to deal with the consequences of that as well. Another thing I think is going to happen in the show for sure is that Minosos is going to show up, this person she talked to on the phone briefly. And I do wonder what's going to happen in this dynamic if he is way more toxic than she is, because then it'll be very interesting to see her like actually being like moderate in comparison to someone who is extremely conspiratorial and maybe destructive. But it'd be interesting to see them meet up with each other. Yeah, and a few more things to bring up. I don't know if you came up with any other kind of potential readings of the show or any kind of, I don't think Gilligan wants us to have a very clear, he doesn't have a political agenda usually with his shows. And I don't think he has a very clear, intentional, one size fits all reading of it. But I did think that they are exposing some of these. It's a satire of the fantasy of socialism. What would that actually look like? There's the benefits of it. Wow, isn't it great that everybody's so efficient? We can collaborate to cure world hunger and to cure every single disease because we do have the manpower to do those things, right? But then you think about the actual culture. I was just reading an article this week in the Wall Street Journal about how the unemployment rate among people coming out of college is climbing. It's like near a recent record, and it continues to climb. But also the type of jobs these people are getting, they are like Instacarters and Uber drivers and TaskRabbiting and doing multiple side hustles to make ends meet. And they don't really have any kind of coming out of college with college level jobs. And those college level jobs are actually disappearing a little bit at a time. And I do think about the fact that you have this economy where all these young people are basically doing tasks for laundering clothes for people who are wealthy and established. And we have these like two different economies. And those people could be curing diseases, but that is not where our society puts the weight of where we invest, basically.
Right.
So I do wonder if there is some aspect of both of these, right? Once again, I don't think Gilligan has a very simple political read on any of his shows that he's developed in the past. I think he's playing with both of these things. The fantasy of this kumbaya type culture has its limitations, but then again, like the extremity of the hoarding resources for the 1% of the population is obviously not ideal either. And it's these two things conflict with each other. Is there anything else there that's kind of starting to emerge as you watch the show?
Not yet. I'm wondering how, as a person who is not a big fan of sci-fi, as we've talked about, I'm wondering how this is all going to develop and where it's going to go, because right now it's kind of an interesting exploration of the human condition, but I could see a development where this becomes very alien focused, and I hope it doesn't.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that is the direction the show is going in. I think it's going to try to play with the metaphor at a very human level. I don't expect them to be like on a rocket ship or anything at some point in the future, but who knows? Yeah. Maybe that is where the show goes in season 2 or something. I just don't think that that's, even though Gilligan worked on the X-Files, that's not his brand of science fiction. It seems to be very grounded in general with the things he obviously the ideas are not necessarily grounded, but the execution is. And I do think that's more his style. So curious to see how that goes. All right, Sona, I thank you again for the conversation.
Thank you.
And anybody out there who's curious to hear that conversation about Down Cemetery Road, I'll be including it right after this one. So stay tuned. Thanks, Sona.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, Lucy, we've been just talking ahead of time, just getting to know each other a little bit. So Lucy's joining the podcast for the first time. So you mentioned to me before we started recording that you started listening to the podcast probably back with Mare of Easttown. That's very early back or maybe you came to those episodes later on, but that was a very long time ago. Have you been any particular coverage or any show that we introduced you to that you especially enjoyed?
Let me think. You're quite broad in what you go with. You do a lot more horror than I would normally watch. I followed with you guys through the Alien Earth, which I had such high hopes for.
Same.
Because I love the franchise. They really hinted that they were going to be celebrating some of the visuals and the style of the early film. And I got really excited in the first episode and I thought, wow, this could be really good. And it just kind of went downhill from there. It just got messier and I got sadder and sadder. But the first episode I adored and I loved it when the spaceship hit the hotel and was just there. It was like in the big building, like the spaceship comes down, crashes on the earth and the engines are still roaring. It was intense. I loved that.
And I loved less with all the showering of sparks on every levels of that
set. There were a lot of sparks. The sparks didn't stop, did they? They loved the sparks. They got really into the sparks.
They're like 40.
They were happy about that.
Yeah, they're 40 floors underground and still sparks raining down. I'm like, okay, we got it. But I did love the pilot of that season and even maybe the first half of it up until the flashback up until the space station. I think that's probably like the peak of the show. And then it just had this non-ending, which I found very unsatisfying.
Oh no, it really upset me. I got more and more annoyed. Just all my hopes were dashed. And all the characters I wanted to see more of, they just ignored. It felt quite personal to me. I was like, I want to see these people more together. I want to know about this. And they either killed off or just cut short all the things I wanted to see. Yeah, it was quite upsetting.
The main reason I wanted to bring you on here would be to ask you some questions, maybe some cultural questions, but also because I have been watching Down Cemetery Lane, which is based on, this is actually Mick Heron's very first book that he wrote before he started writing the Slow Horses novels. And Slow Horses has been a huge hit for Apple TV. And Zoe, this character in this series as well, she has a series of books. I think he's done 3 novels with her as the investigator. So he's a parallel. So, I mean, they've done it with Slow Horses and there's another one on the way next year. So I'm sure they want to spin this off equally successfully. I was very much looking forward to this. Loved a lot of the people in front of the camera as well. And then the reviews came in and it was very mediocre. And I was watching Slow Horses and it wrapped up. And I was really surprised by those mediocre reviews because we have 4 episodes of this now. I'm not sure if you've seen all 4, but we could discuss whatever you have watched. And I am loving this show. I think this show's terrific. I prefer this series so far to the most recent season of Slow Horses. Oh, how do you feel about it so far?
I am up to I've got 2 minutes left of episode 4.
You've pretty much seen it then.
I've pretty much seen as much as I could do before we were going to speak. I did watch Slow Horses, but I don't think I'm up to date with it. Where did it get to? 4 seasons, was it?
This might be 5 seasons at this point. I have to look.
And maybe never made it past 2, I think, but it was good.
Mhm.
And no, I've really been enjoying it. I found, and I'm not going to remember this terribly well, but I just found Slow Horses got a bit too much. It seemed I really wanted to see much more small drama, I guess, more interpersonal stuff, and I felt like it was just getting too explosive and crazy. And I wanted to keep it a bit smaller, and it obviously had plans to go elsewhere, so I thought leave that one. But I like this. It's got a really unusual blend of very British humor, very acerbic wit, which is sort of a little bit surprising because it's also got a lot of very fast-paced action, lots of plot, and also some quite extreme drama, which sort of throws me occasionally because I'm like, that was quite good. That was quite like moving. And now you're like throwing quick fire jokes at me again. And I'm a bit confused. But overall, I love it because Emma Thompson, I could just watch all day. She's brilliant in this. And also her co-star, I did write it down, Ruth Wilson.
Ruth Wilson,
I recognize her, but I can't remember from what. But I think she is excellent as well. She's so human and she's so awkward and believable as the character that she plays. This sort of misplaced middle class woman, unfulfilled but smart. Yeah, and I think she does that really well. What did you think of the characters?
I'm loving it so far. Ruth Wilson, by the way, I know she was in like His Dark Materials on HBO recently, which I have not watched, but I know her from simultaneously seeing her on the Luther series, the
I meant
Idris
to
Elba.
watch that, yeah.
Oh, highly recommended. And she's definitely coming back they just announced there's going to be another movie because they had 3 seasons of that show over a very long period of time because Idris Elba got so famous. And then she's his Moriarty, although their relationship becomes more interesting over time. And she's definitely coming back for this next movie version, which they just announced today on the way as well. And always a fan favorite. But at the same time, she was also on The Affair here in the United States on that Showtime series, which is the story of an affair over the course of years and from both perspectives, from the man's perspective and from the woman's perspective. So a very interesting series. If you haven't seen that, also very highly recommended.
I haven't seen that. That's a really interesting idea, though.
It was her with another British actor pretending to be American, Dominic West from The Wire.
Ah, yes. He's lovely. I've got time for him.
Yeah, I very much enjoy him as well. Yeah. And what has he done recently? I just saw him in something relatively recently. Can't remember.
I did see him in something recently, but yeah, nothing as good as The Wire for a while, I think.
Definitely nothing tops The Wire.
That was his defining role, wasn't it? Hard to get away from.
But I love Ruth Wilson. I loved Sarah, her character. I love how they introduce her. She's like an art restorer. We see her with those bug eyes, so like those lenses, so that she could see the artwork she's working on. And it's very interesting. That's like the first time we see her. So she looks very closely at things, but maybe too closely, because at one point it's like she's obsessed with saving this girl. It's not even someone she's met. She doesn't even realize that it's someone she hasn't met. So maybe looking too closely, looking at something that isn't really there. But in this particular case, this conspiracy does exist. And of course, love Emma Thompson also playing Zoe Bohm, I think her name is the character's name, who is just this investigator. I also love her husband. And at first, I was actually angry at the end of the first episode that they killed him off. But I'm like, I guess you needed to, because now it's like her motivation to keep pursuing this, right? We have to feel his loss.
I agree. And that must have been the way it had to go. But I thought he was really interesting, and I was really interested to find out. Emma Thompson is this sort of fabulously jaded older woman who works as a private investigator beside her husband, but not with her husband.
Right.
And you don't really get a great idea of their history, but you know it existed. And I felt really teased that they saw him off so soon, because I just wanted to know, how did they meet? Right. Who were they when they were younger? They seem to have been married for a really long time. And you can tell that there's sort of affection, even though there is difficulty between them. So I felt the same. Then when they killed him off, I was like, oh, but Joe, I want to know about Joe.
Exactly.
He was lovely.
Yeah. And my favorite thing about him is not only, like you said, we tease all these things that we really never find out about. She's cheating on him. He knows about it. He doesn't seem like she's cheating on him because it's like some kind of retribution. He seems hurt by this, but never shows it. She obviously has feelings for him, but she doesn't show it. So what is their history and all of that? But most important of all is he's the one who wants to be the private detective. And it's almost like you expect this setup to be that she's really the one who does all the work. But it turns out, no, this guy's really good at his job. And that's what actually gets him killed. He figured this whole thing out like on day one, and he had to be rubbed out for that very reason. And then they're still trying to catch up at this point. So, and yeah, I was like, oh, I couldn't wait to see him do more sleuthing because he seems to like intuit immediately. When he meets somebody, he gets a read on them right away. He can figure them out. And we see him go out for that drink that night. And he's like charging all the drinks in the bar. Like, oh boy, he's in over his head after she explicitly told him, don't do that again. So you're like, oh, this is going to pay off in some way. And then he's dead right away. I did not expect that at all. But
it was a shock. And they surprised me a lot, especially in the first episode. Yep. I didn't know how quickly it would move. And I think I liked that. I think I liked being surprised. I was like, okay, you got me. I'm in. Next episode.
Exactly. It's a good thing they have two, because then you have to feel what the show looks like without him in it. And it works well. One thing that we saw it in this episode finally, where the two of them are speaking to each other on the phone, a very funny phone conversation. She's trying to like whisper this conversation with her abductor in the other room, which she's like willfully, she's kidnapped, quote unquote, but at the same time will not leave this guy alone. He keeps jumping into the car with him. So very funny turn of events. But I want to see the two of them together, which I assume the show is going to put them back together very soon. As soon as you hear them on the phone together, you're like, these two actresses have to get into a room together because this is what we're waiting for.
Absolutely. And they complement each other because they've taken a different path through life and they've ended up with very different personalities. But you just get that sense that they have things to learn from each other. I think there's a scene on the roof. Is it in the second episode where they're together? And it's funny and it's really honest. And Emma Thompson is being typically horrible. And gets called out by Sarah, the character Sarah. And I think that there's a lot of strength in Sarah, but she's not doing it the way that Zoe's character is. But they're both tough women. They're tough women with a lot of wisdom. And I think, I really want to see them together. And I'm sure we're going to get that. I'm sure we're going to get at least 2. How many episodes do we have total, by the way?
I think it's 8
for this one.
So we're about we're halfway basically through.
I'm wanting at least 2 where they team up.
There's a lot of pictures. I'm on the IMDb page.
A lot of,
There's a lot of pictures of them together. So I assume, hopefully it's not all just the last episode.
They're good foils for each other as well, I think. And that will be really fun to watch them in action, having to solve problems together with their very different styles.
The other great dynamic of comedic dynamic here is this character just called C, which is played by the actor Darren Boyd. It's a very tall, handsome, stereotypical, like alpha male. And
he's the ministry guy.
Yes.
He
and
is
Hamza,
fabulous.
He's just the biggest jerk in the world and just kicks Hamza around, who is the two of them together. Just this guy's a foot shorter than Darren Boyd, which is just seeing the two of them together is hilarious. And just Hamza trying to fix this problem, and it just gets worse and worse. And these assassins they have working for them are just killing off more and more people. And it's just getting more complicated. Now, one of them is dead too, and the other guy's on everybody's radar as well. And then we have this other actor I really like a lot, Nathan Stewart Jarrett, playing Downey, who's with Paula right now. And if we could take him at face value, I assume he's a good guy because he could have just killed Paula at this point. Even though he used to work with these guys, he actually is trying to save this girl.
He's the guy who was in the van who was following her all the time. Yes, he's good.
Who rescued her. So I'm very curious to see where that goes as well.
One thing I found myself noticing about this, I don't know if this is coloured by British television. It might be. But I felt like it looked like it was going to be quite mainstream. It looked like it was going to be played quite straight. But I really felt like it was quite almost like a graphic novel in the way a lot of the characters presented, which I like. The minister, the bad guys in the ministry who are up to no good, we don't really know what they're trying to hide. But it's played quite large, you know? It's funny.
Yes.
It's funny. And the characters are larger than life and a bit ridiculous, but kind of fun to be with. And so I was a bit surprised. I was like, this is actually, I mean, it's not a million miles from Jessica Jones in a way, because the bad guys are kind of ridiculous. They are these sort of psychopaths in suits working for the government, which is all hopefully a bit unlikely. But I really enjoyed that about it. And I wondered, personally, I felt like it maybe needed to look a little bolder because I did. And this, I watch a lot of British TV and it has a certain style, which I don't love. It's quite straight.
Yep.
And for this show, I wanted a little bit more escapism visually because it is big. It is a bit of a caper, even though it's got some really touching drama and works with some really big themes. I just felt like I wanted just to be moved away from my daily life, I guess, because it does look like my Oxford is not dissimilar to where I live. The architecture, the people, the clothes. And so I sort of wanted to separate it a little bit. I don't know if you noticed that or if it grated at all.
I noticed that, not specifically what you're describing, but I definitely noticed that there is a certain house style when you see a lot of BBC produced shows, for example, especially police procedurals. They all have very much the same style over and over again. Not that a lot of US shows, if you're watching NYPD Blue versus Law and Order, honestly, even though they're decades apart, there's not like a huge difference in style there either. So there's kind of an expected cliche of the production style. But I definitely see that a lot with British shows. And even with Slow Horses a little bit, it definitely falls into that. And I agree. I actually think that this does feel like a little more of, the style is a little different there. It does feel a little more domestic and a little less of like a police procedural. But I agree, like, especially, honestly, this conspiracy with these drugs that they're giving to these, and if they stop taking them, they might die, or like, so we're just seeing hints of what this broader conspiracy may actually be. And it's probably going to be pretty outlandish, whatever it turns out to be. So maybe it would be a little fun if they allowed the show to be a little looser in that way. I think about Utopia. Did you ever see Utopia, the British series?
I didn't, no.
Oh, you never saw this. You should definitely check it out. It's the actor who plays Hamza is in that as well. And it was remade in the United States badly. Don't watch the remake. Actually, Gillian Flynn, the writer of Gone Girl, was the writer and showrunner. And David Fincher was supposed to make that series, but it actually was made by somebody else. He dropped out of the project. That's the American version. Anyway, the British version, really interesting. It is a very broad conspiracy. It literally takes place in the very first episode. There is a comic book that has some conspiracy inside of it. And anyone who's seen this comic book starts getting killed off because it's just come to market. And it turns out that whoever did the artwork in the comic book actually knows of a real government conspiracy. So if you haven't seen that, it's extremely dark, extremely comic. And it's from about 10 years ago, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty easy to stream. And I do highly recommend that. But the reason I mention all that is that's a British produced series that really takes the fact that it is telling a story that partially is the story inside this comic book. And it is the colors are very heightened. The styling is very heightened. Like all the night scenes are very blue. So it very much is like a comic book type styling. Given what you just said, you may want to track this down for sure.
Oh, that sounds really interesting because we do tend to do things in the same way in the UK. The way we shoot is very recognizable to me.
Agreed.
So I like it when there's a few more risks taken cinematically with shows.
And the last question I have and about the show, part of the reason I wanted to have this conversation with you specifically is maybe there's a cultural thing there that I'm not aware of, but if you watch Slow Horses, and of course, if you watch any TV show where you're talking about MI5, there is a very cynical view, and we see it here again with C, this shady government agent here in this series. There seems to be a real mistrust for government agencies and bureaucracy in general. And in this very season of Slow Horses, which is like a running theme of all of Slow Horses, this is based on a book called London Rules. And Russian rules is watch your back, is Russian rules. And London rules is cover your ass. So the idea being that slow horses themselves exist so that the more elite version of MI5 always has them as their fall guy when things go wrong. But it seems to be like whenever anything does go wrong on that show, it's all about blaming somebody else and covering your own ass and not actually fixing the problem. As a matter of fact, probably making it worse. And this seems to be like a theme in a lot of these British shows. So I'm curious, like, is there a cultural opinion or just a stereotype that the government and bureaucracy is just not to be trusted at all?
Absolutely. It's so firmly held that I don't think anyone ever talks about it anymore. We hugely distrust the civil service, broadly speaking. So anything that's government related and bureaucratic has a terrible reputation for being badly managed, wasting time, wasting money, and generally employing people who do, I'm telling you the truth now, this is what people will say, employing people, and I apologize if you're a civil servant, this is a huge generalization, but employing people who just don't care and get excellent perks. It's a bit like having a federal job. You get good holidays, you get good pay, you get good pensions, and they don't much like doing work. So it does have a terrible reputation. I don't know, and I'm sure I thank you, civil servants, because we do need them. But yeah, there's a bit of a problem with perception, I'd say, in England, and it always has been.
We see it even here in this episode of the show when she goes and breaks into the doctor's office to get his medical records and steal his laptop. And the secretary says, I'm going to call the police. And he goes, why would you call the police? They're just going to stand around and laugh at me.
Yeah. And I do think this is something that was done really well, is there's a lot of detail in this show that I really liked. There's a lot of very funny, very on the nose comments and dialogue that I don't know if Americans will get directly, but it's really well observed. I probably wrote some down. There's a few things. I bet these just go straight over the heads of anyone who's not stuck in rainy Britain. There's a bit where, this is bound to not be registered, but there's a bit, you remember when she's in the van with the guy, Sarah's in the van with the guy, they're sort of on the run and they stop at a gas station. Mm-hmm. And he says, well, put your hood up and put your mask on. And she does. And she's standing behind a woman who, at the checkout, who suddenly becomes aware of her presence and sort of turns around. The woman turns around, affronted. And Sarah, thinking on her feet, which she does really well. I love this. She really does sort of make stuff up. She's really good at improvising. And she's not supposed to be in any of these situations, which makes it even more hilarious. But she improvises and she says to the woman, she sort of leans into the woman and sniffs a bit. And the woman sort of looks even more surprised. And then she says, oh, I just wondered, I just smelt a gorgeous scent. What is that? She said, is that Joe Malone? And that's a reference, which I don't think people will get. Joe Malone is a very popular middle class perfume that everybody went crazy for. It started to get popular about 5 years ago. And it's just exactly what two middle-aged women might say to each other in the line at a checkout. It's like, is that Joe? Oh, it is Joe Malone. You know, and she even names, I think, the flavor of scent. There's maybe 2 or 3 really famous scents by this perfumier. And I just thought that was brilliant. I think is it Morwenna Banks wrote some of this?
I think, yes.
I can't remember. She's been around for a really long time. And she, I think, has contributed quite a lot to British comedy. So I kept picking up a lot of these little throwaway jokes and things and really appreciating them because they are current and they are really well observed and they're kind. It's funny comedy. It's gentle nudges at stereotypes. And I think she did that really well.
A couple of points to that. One is that was a very funny scene, even though I didn't get the cultural reference at all. Still, just like that. That's how she's playing it off to be like, oh, you know, she's just sniffing her up for some reason. So it played very well. And also, I was very curious. I really liked the feel of those first 2 episodes. So I'm like, I always checked, like, what has the showrunner done before? And I'm really surprised that she had just done these comedies. I, for some reason, thought it might even be, I think she's also written on Slow Horses, by the way. She definitely is one of the writers.
Yeah.
But I think she's just like in the writer's room because she didn't have any explicit episode by writing. So she might just be like, maybe she just puts in jokes or just adds some detail, some color to this script. So she might just be, that might be her place. So I was curious that she hadn't been a showrunner before. I think she's doing a great job. And to your point, it's not only very funny, there's a lot of comedy here. It does not get in the way of like the drama itself, which I think still is very relevant. So I thought it was really good.
Yeah. I really liked as well. I thought so far we've had some really great supporting characters, some not so great supporting characters. The very first episode, I was very worried it was going to all be caricature. They had a couple of hippies come round for dinner, and it was just so heavy-handed.
One of them is turned out to be, that was a performance he was putting on as well. So that's an interesting turn. Although, I think that the girlfriend is still very much like a pretty stereotypical character all the way through.
They called her Wigwam. That's like, no, I know, but that was just too much. But then there have been some really fun characters. I really like Sam in the hotel. I think he's only in episode 4. He's just a sort of customer service guy, hapless customer service guy. He's really good.
Glad he didn't get killed off, by the way. Like when she sent him to run interference, he just put the guy's head into the wall. At least he didn't murder him, which I was like, thank God, because I really like that character.
Yeah, definitely. And also I quite liked Wayne, who works in the morgue, who becomes inappropriately inspired to quit his job from talking to Zoe, who gives him some tips about following his dreams. It's really funny.
He gives it all up to be a Twitch streamer.
He wants to stream a video game.
She's like, you didn't do that. You didn't do that for real, did you?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah, there's a lot of fun. Very much enjoying that as well, and can't wait for the next episode. And we got 4 more to go, so it'll be a lot of fun. Anything you've seen recently that you want to shout out?
Ooh, I Love LA.
Okay.
I like a bit of Gen Z topical stuff just because I'm interested. It's like, what's going on for young people now? How do they move through the world? What are their concerns? What are their interests? What are they busy with? So I'm kind of enjoying that. It's fun. It's okay. It's fun, I think. We'll see. I think there's only been 2 episodes for that one so far. What else am I following? Pluribus, of course. Yeah. Who isn't watching that?
Everybody is, apparently.
Must be. I'm sure everyone's got lots to say about that, so I won't, but I am loving it so far. What else have I been looking at? I did start watching Welcome to Derry. The intro was so much, though. I was like, do I really want to spend my time here?
Yeah, I'm not sure you should.
I don't think it's quite right for me, but I am curious. I must have had something a bit more offbeat. Oh, after watching the Scorsese, I'm trying to pronounce his name right because I've always said it in a lazy way, Scorsese, but it's not, is it? It's Scorsese, I think, with a more Italian accent. I watched that, and then obviously I did a deep dive and went, oh my God, there's so many films I haven't seen. So I did go back and watch, and this is probably the least taxing and intellectual of any of his films, but I watched The Color of Money.
Which is a lot of fun. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. Yep. A lot of fun. I liked it a lot. So I'm going to go back and do as many of his films as I can.
You could barely miss with his filmography. And I do agree, like The Color of Money is probably one of his most forgotten films, even though it's very popular. I don't think it's forgotten. I think it's just that people don't think about it when they think about him. And, but yeah, I mean, Paul Newman's incredible in that. Tom Cruise gives a really good performance. The Werewolves of London scene where he's and this, you saw it in the documentary, but Scorsese was talking about how he thought he's gonna have to like fake the shots a lot, but he had practiced so much that he made every single shot. He's like, okay, I guess we get the shot. That's it, just set up once. And I really wish that Tom Cruise, by the way, would go back to making more interesting films. I love his Mission Impossible films, but he should do it at this point. Another one I shout out all the time is Cape Fear, which is, again, is way better than it has any right to be. So
I haven't seen that one for a long time. I might go back to that one as well. What else have I been watching? I did watch Good Boy the other day.
The horror
Good
film
Boy.
With the dog?
Yeah, the dog one. I liked that a lot.
I did too. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I think it could have been better. I see what he was doing, and I think it lost its way a little bit here and there. But overall, I was like, I just loved watching the dog. I was so tuned.
Exactly.
The dog, I was just really tuned in on the dog and its whiskers and its blinking and its anxiety and whatever. And I think I hadn't realized quite how watchable that was. From an editing point of view as well, I think it was superb. Just I can't imagine how much footage they must have had to take to put that together.
We talked about it very briefly on the podcast, but it was very interesting that the filmmaker made it in his own house with his own dog. They shot it over the course of months. So this is actually the best way to make that type of low budget film, where it's like you have unlimited time and you just set up a shot every day or something and you can make the whole film that way.
I was joking with a friend that it would be an excellent investment to buy whatever that breed of dog was, because I'm sure there's going to be loads of people who want one. It's a special kind of dog, isn't it? I hadn't seen it before, but yeah, amazing.
The video at the beginning, which also is from the filmmaker himself, but the dog is a puppy growing up. By the end of the credits, everybody in the theater is in love with that dog.
Yeah, it's special, really good, lots of amazing work. A bit messy, but amazing work. It was done for a really low budget.
Very little,
and, yeah, quite unique.
Just the premise itself, but also very technically well made. I mean, I think all the creepy scenes work really well. There's very little special effects or anything in it. Yeah, I was very impressed with that. And it's pretty low stakes as a movie, but I'd love to see what they do next, because that's a very
Exactly. It's a strong start, wasn't it?
For sure.
Very strong start, yeah.
And when you can make a whole movie that is captivating with almost no resources, you're very curious to see what they can do with something when they have some resources, right?
Yeah.
One recommendation I have, which I don't think I've brought up on the podcast yet, which just premiered on HBO Max relatively recently, is a film called Sorry Baby. Have you heard about this?
I have not.
This is a movie that's been around all year long, and it's a very low budget film as well. It's about this woman who is living in this college town, and we see her meet with a friend early in the film. And from her interactions with the friend, she's had some kind of trauma that she's dealing with. And then we flash back to what that is. I'm going to be very vague because I don't want to give anything away. And it was on a lot of people's top 10 lists. And I was like, all right, a very low budget movie about some girl living in this college town. Speaking of Gen Z and them dealing with their life situations. And I'm like, okay, but is it really one of the best movies of the year? I've seen it because now it's on HBO Max, and it's one of the best movies of the year. And speaking about a movie that is made with very little resources, this is about this person dealing with this trauma that she's had, and it doesn't feel generic at all. It seems so personal. The trauma is very difficult to deal with, but she deals with it. The actress is also the director and writer as well. So incredibly talented. And it does not feel like a cliched way to deal with the material at all. It's so funny and so specific that it's very highly recommended. I actually bumped it into my top 5 for the year when I just saw it recently. And it's called Sorry Baby. It has a great final scene. And yeah, it's just so humane. It's so beautiful. And it's just a really funny scene. I think about, she's very socially awkward, and she is just kind of a prickly type of person. And then suddenly has this breakdown in the car and starts to hyperventilate right in front of this guy's shop. And this burly guy comes running out being like, you can't park your car there. You can't park your car there. And then completely unexpected, he sees her hyperventilating and he goes, oh, hold on. My son used to have this. And he starts breathing with her and talking her through it. And it becomes this very touching scene. And as he's breathing with her, he goes, I should breathe like this all the time. This feels really good.
That's good.
And then they have a sandwich together. And she's like, this is a really good sandwich. He's like, you got to make a good sandwich if you own a sandwich shop. And it's just like this moment in her recovery that where this stranger, and he never shows up again in the movie. It's just like another moment in her recovery. And it's just full of these little humane observations, and it's really beautiful. It's a really good film.
And does it leave you feeling uplifted at the end?
It does. It's not dark at all. And I don't want to spoil the ending because it's a great final scene. It's her coming through this period of time. One of the observations I think it makes is that people deal with things in sometimes really unexpected and weird ways, in their own ways and in their own time. And it's just it's a very humane film. I really highly recommend.
That feels quite life affirming.
A big fan of it. Yeah. And very easy to watch. It's on HBO Max, so it's very easy to watch.
Excellent. I'm going to check that out.
All right, Lucy, thank you for the conversation.
Thank you so much. It's been really fun.
It's been fun. And we'll do it again sometime.
So nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too. Thank you so much.
Bye.